Hello there and welcome to episode 22 of Colonization Project. Right now we are launching the new rocket that I said we were going to be launching in the last episode, and as you can see it is launching from the sea. You may have caught this launch, the first part of the launch in the last part of last episode. But now we are launching it for actually in a video this time. So here we are. You can see this rocket is sort of a very cursed combination of the Sea Dragon and the Saturn V. It uses those 4 ULH motors and to lift it out of the ocean. Then it uses Saturn V fuel tanks, of 8 different solid rocket boosters, and a single massive scaled up main sail engine. So it's quite a cursed combination of lots of rockets, but it works. So we can launch a brand new module up to Sunset Star into orbit. You can see it right now. Sunset Star cannot go to Eve without engines or fuel. It doesn't have either of those right now. So this is just going to be the module that has the fuel and the engines. It's so heavy that we needed a new launch vehicle to launch it. However, this is not the main purpose of this new launch vehicle, which I am going to call the Orca, because the Orca, it kind of looks like the Orca. The Orca and Orca, because of its white and black color scheme. It was supposed to be called a Hammerhead, but then I realized it doesn't look anything like a Hammerhead. So I'm just calling it Orca for now, because I think that's the best name. And also, orcas are sort of the king of the sea, because if I remember correctly, which I didn't do any research on this, so it could very well be wrong, orcas can be an apex predator in some environments, so and this is the biggest rocket we've ever created, and it's launched from the sea, so sort of makes sense, maybe, if I'm correct at this, maybe not. Anyways, the solid rocket boosters are recoverable, so we will be able to get a bit of cost back from those. And of course, the first stage is reusable because we don't want to be wasting all those expensive fuel tanks and engines and all that. I was trying to land on the drone ship here, but we couldn't land it. But then I was like, we launched it from the ocean, so we should be fine landing it in the ocean. So I'm pretty sure that we're just going to be landing the boosters in the ocean from now on. Not all of the other boosters, though, because those aren't waterproof. But the Sea Dragon... Wait, this isn't the Sea Dragon. This is the Orca. The Orca is designed to be launched from the water, so it's waterproof. Now we are rendezvousing with Sunset Star, and this will actually be the last module that we send up until we send up the crew. And after that, we can send the crew off to Eve, our first interplanetary mission, which is pretty cool. You can also see we do have not only the monopropellant thrusters that we were supposed to use for Sunset Star, but we also have 2, 4, 8 extra, not monopropellant thrusters, but vernier thrusters, because this thing weighs so much that we actually have to use the liquid fuel and oxidizer thrusters, because it would be useless to maneuver it with just the monopropellant thrusters. They wouldn't provide enough thrust. But these very powerful bipropellant RCS thrusters, they're pretty good. They provide more than enough thrust for us to maneuver this rather large module around, which I can talk more about right now. The outside we have, I believe, 6 of the smaller nuclear engines, and then the center engine is this massive nuclear engine. We're using nuclear engines here because they're pretty efficient, and nuclear engines are cool. And That's basically the only yeah, and we don't have any more efficient engines right now. I mean, for some reason, we have unlocked the Orion drive. The tech node Advanced Nuclear Propulsion. I think that was it. For some reason, it gave us the Orion drive. I feel that that's kind of overpowered, but we don't. We don't have enough money to actually afford an Orion drive or all the nuclear weapons that come with it. Because you probably have to pay a lot for them because, you know, if you're buying hundreds of tons worth of nuclear weapons, you're probably going to be questioned. And it's going to be quite hard to explain that you're going to use them to propel a spacecraft through space. So they're quite expensive. And I don't think I'll be using them for a while because they're kind of overpowered this early in the game. But they are very efficient. Very, very efficient. But the nuclear engines will do for this mission. And we're not taking like a fast burst to Chrome trajectory across the solar system or anything. We're just taking a nice, easy home and transfer. Nothing too special there. We won't be taking burst to Chrome trajectories for a very long time until we get extremely efficient propulsion like fusion propulsion. That's when we will start doing burst to Chrome trajectories. But now, after we do a little flip there, we need to send a crew up to Sunset Star. And Jebediah, Billy Bob, and Valentina will not be on this mission. Jebediah is only here to pilot the craft because, you know, he's Jebediah. But we are sending different crew members off to Eve. But Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Valentina, and I think another Kerpel, are going to be on the Duna mission that we will be sending in another episode. Which will be very soon, because the Duna transfer window is coming up very fast. I actually forgot how fast it was coming up, so we have to devise a very quick and easy to make transfer vehicle. Definitely not as grand as the Sunset Star. But that will be in a separate episode. Now we are using the booster like always. We are launching during the night because we are a bit late to the transfer window, and we want to get everything done as soon as possible. So that's why I was trying to land the booster on the drone, not the drone ship. I was trying to land it back on the launch pad because I thought, you know, we can switch it up a little bit. We didn't get a pinpoint landing, but we did land with 0 meters per second left, so tight fuel margins. But now we can head back up to space where we are rendezvousing with Sunset Star in order for us to get the crew there, because it's kind of useless building this giant interplanetary spacecraft and sending it off to Eve if it doesn't have a crew. Why else would we build a giant spacecraft capable of carrying crew to Eve if we're not going to carry any crew to Eve? But now you can see we have arrived. We can use the RCS thrusters to dock like always. And I feel like I should be talking about something right now, but I'm not sure what it is that I should be talking about. The life support. You may see sometimes that the life support says we only have like 40, 50, 60 days of life support left. That is false. We actually have more than enough life support to complete the mission. However, it's only saying that because those supplies haven't been converted into... Actually, the fertilizer hasn't been converted into supplies yet. Because that little greenhouse module that you see, we are actually going to be... we are actually going to grow some crops in space, so we don't have to be carrying around hundreds of tons worth of life support. It's very efficient because we can get a lot more out of the life support than we normally would. So yeah, that's pretty good. Now we are just disassembling all the redundant parts to keep the frame rate up. I'm not disassembling any of the extra monopropellant tanks, but we can disassemble all the liquid bipropellant RCS thrusters, the bipropellant fuel tanks, all that good stuff that we need. Actually, it's not good stuff because it's redundant parts. Also, it decreases the total mass of the entire craft, which allows for more Delta V to do cool things around Kerbin and Eve. We are disassembling the solar panels because the 2 Gigantor solar arrays does provide more than enough electricity to sustain all the processes on the space station. This isn't a space station. This is a interplanetary spacecraft. If it was a space station, then it wouldn't have those nuclear engines on it, now would it? Yeah, you can see it says we only have about a little less than a year's worth of life support. That's okay there though, because we have the little greenhouse module. But now Jebediah is returning Enterprise back to Kerbin. Once again, Jebediah is on this mission because we need a very experienced Kerbal to pilot it, and that belly flop maneuver can only be performed by the brave Jebediah at Kerbin. I mean, it can be performed by other Kerbals, but Jebediah is cool. Okay, so we are draining a bit of fuel. Thankfully, we didn't drain too much fuel. We don't want a repeat of the last episode. But we are heading back to the Kerbal Space Center with more than enough fuel to land and more than enough thrust to land. And Jebediah, since he is the pilot on this mission, since the booster landed on the launch pad, Jebediah thinks he can do better. He's going to land on top of the VAB. Because, you know, he has to one-up the definitely not sentient AI that controls all of our boosters and probes. He has to one-up it, or else it won't be as cool, because he's Jebediah Kerman. So we head over the VAB, we reignite all the engines, and land like we normally would. We do have to start to burn a bit earlier, because the Kerbal Engineer Hover Slam calculator, it doesn't calculate the bases as terrain. So, but now we are landing. Bit of a hard landing there, but we can land. And for some reason, the entire VAB just decides to explode. I realized this. Then I'm just like, we're coming down too fast. So we ignite the engines once again. And we softly touch down into burning remnants of the VAB. We'll be taking that out of Jebediah's paycheck, of course. It doesn't cost that much to repair it, so it only costs about 30,000 funds. I don't think Jebediah is going to be too happy about that. But now we are launching the Gilly lander. We're going to land on Gilly, and it's launching on the Pleiades. You may remember this rocket from a long time ago. It has sustained some improvements. The first stage is now powered by one of those Raptor engines, which gives us a lot of thrust off the launch pad. And the second stage is an RL-10, so very efficient. And it's... any other rocket would be overkill carrying this lander into orbit. So I just decided, let's bring the Pleiades back just for this one launch and other very small launches. We probably could have launched this on a Cyclops launch vehicle, but I completely forgot about that. It also might not have had enough Delta V with all those inefficient solid rocket motors. But a couple details about this lander. It's using it has a bit of extra fuel for a Gilly landing. It's using a nuclear engine because I like using nuclear engines. They're pretty cool. But not just any nuclear engine. It's using the Candle engine. apparently what I said in the last time we used the Candle nuclear engine, which was on the Joule probes, I'm very wrong about how the Candle actually works. I still don't know how it works, but it's definitely a bit more complex than just passing the propellant through an RTG. It's definitely more complex than that, but I do not know enough about it in order for me to explain it to other people. I don't even know how it works. So, yeah. Now we can get our engineer out to disassemble the stage. We don't want to be leaving any space debris in orbit. We're not gaining any material kits from this because we don't have any storage anywhere near. That would just be extra mass. What else would we use it for? Not setting up a colony on Eve yet. Though a colony on Eve would be cool. But because eventually once we get fusion power, ascending from Eve is going to be a piece of cake. It won't be that hard to actually return from Eve because, fusion power, which is very efficient everywhere. But we're not setting up a colony on Eve or Gilly yet. We're just sending a quick little mission out to Eve to get some science and actually get us fusion engines. You can see I'm just making a quick save there because I really don't want to kill the crew of Sunset Star. I was very concerned that the life support would run out, but I later found out that the life support readouts are just wrong. Now we are going to head off to Eve. That's pretty cool. Our first interplanetary mission with crew. We can ignite those 7 Nervas, I guess. Would you call them Nervas if they're not actually Nervas? Because Nerva is actually the nuclear engines that the United States developed a very long time ago. I think. I could be very wrong about that. I could be very wrong about everything. But I believe Nerva was actually the engines that were developed in real life. That was just the name of them. But would you call them Nervas if they're not actually the Nerva? Interesting. I mean, you probably would. I guess it's just an easy way to say nuclear engine. But we are igniting 7 of those off to yeet us off to Eve. Pretty simple now. We do have to do a couple passes because of the low thrust to weight ratio. And for some reason, the maneuver node doesn't like multiple passes of a maneuver node. As you can see, the delta V ratings are going up, not down. And yeah, the maneuver just looks weird. Thankfully though, we can still get on a more or less encounter with Eve. We can blot out a mid-course correction. And yeah, they will arrive in about, I don't know how many days, but they will arrive soon. They will not be aerobraking because the vessel doesn't have a heat shield. It would be quite dangerous if it didn't aerobrake. Actually, if it did aerobrake, because that's pretty dangerous right there. Especially going into Eve's atmosphere. You really need a heat shield to do anything in Eve's atmosphere above like 2 kilometers per second. But now we are launching the final Eve probe or mission of this transfer window, and this is going to be EveSat-1, no creative name here. And EveSat-1 is carrying a bunch of scanners, science equipment, all that. And it's just a little satellite that we'll be sending off to Eve. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's not much in the way of fancy things on this spacecraft. However, it does have some ion engines on it, which is pretty cool. The ion engines, they are just used for orbital maneuvering, because we want this to scan Gilly, and then we're going to have it scan Eve. So we need a bit of delta V to like do all those inclination changes and all that. Which is why we have the ion engine, just for a bit of extra fuel in case we need it. The Eve Armada this is not the Eve Armada. In fact, I would be quite concerned if it was, because we're only launching 2 spacecraft. If you don't remember, which I'm pretty sure most of you don't, the Eve Armada is a series of probes that I launched in the last series. I do not recommend you watch it. It is I recorded it before I knew how to do post commentary, and I do not recommend you go watch it. That's why I started it again. And anyways, what was I talking about before I started talking about the Eve Armada? I'm not entirely sure. However, I can talk about what we're doing right now, which is launching some new tourists up to space. We are sending them up to Singularity, and they will spend like a couple hours on the asteroid before heading back home. The space program right now is almost broke. We only have about 80,000 funds left, which means we don't have enough to do anything. Yeah, the space program is almost bankrupt, but thankfully some tourists are once again willing to pay money in order to go to space. You may be wondering how we're going to dock with the asteroid, because you may remember Enterprise only has a docking port, doesn't have any claws, but I modified it so it does have a claw. However, I put it on a robotic arm, and that was a mistake, which you will see later. If you're ever doing some thinking about claws and robotics together, they don't work well together. Claws are quite buggy, and robotics are quite wobbly. You don't want to have those two together. So if you're ever trying to do something cool with robotics and claws and an asteroid, a massive asteroid, I wouldn't recommend you do it, because the Kraken does not like you if you do it. Although this is Kerbal Space Program after all. You might want to cause chaos with asteroids and create like a light speed mass driver or something. Speaking on the topic of mass drivers, we might actually start constructing a mass driver soon. Because we have a base on Minimus, and how else are we going to get things into orbit? Well, we have 2 options. We use normal rockets, like a normal, sensible person was, but this is the Kerbal Space Program after all. No one in Kerbal Space Program, especially Jebediah Kerman, is an actual sane person. In fact, these are Kerbals. These are not people. So we might. What I want to do, and frankly probably the most Kerbal way of doing things, is actually constructing a mass driver on the surface of Minimus that has 2 rocket engines, one pointing forward, one pointing backwards, and then we just yeet things into orbit using... Actually, yeet wouldn't be the right word, because we're literally just launching them into orbit. I think that would be the better word. But yeah, that's another solution to getting things into orbit around Minimus. We could also use a giant slingshot. One of the solutions we might do. But that won't be now. Right now we are docked to the asteroid. You don't see Starship anywhere because you just saw what happens when you use robotics and claws. They don't work well together. So yeah. But thankfully the Kerbals are satisfied with their trip. They probably had gravity there because it was spinning so much. But now we can return back to Kerbin. And the Space Center is not in a convenient place for a normal reentry, but we don't have to do a normal reentry. Instead, we can do a completely ballistic reentry instead. And, plunge into the atmosphere at incredible velocities instead of being like a normal person and having a nice, gradual, soft reentry. We don't do that here. This is the Kerbal Space Program. And in the Kerbal Space Program, we do the most Kerbal of things and do crazy maneuvers like this. Probably not safe, but safety is priority too. Anyways, now we are re-entering the atmosphere, and I did decide to put a little G meter on Kerbal Engineer. You can see it right about. It's going to be sooner or later. Once I find it in the giant menu that is Kerbal Engineer Redux. But you can see the G-forces going up. We've just hit 1G, 2G, 3, 4, 5, 8, and we eventually get up to 17 Gs. Everyone in the spacecraft passes out due to G-forces. Even Jebediah, which is surprising because, he's Jebediah Kerman. He can survive anything. But thankfully, G-forces, I don't think they actually kill crew. They can turn Kerbals into a pile of mush, though. If you remember the Island Express using only decouplers, that thing pulled like 300 Gs worth of acceleration, almost 400. So I'm very confident that the Kerbal in that video was just a green smear on the back of the spacecraft at the end. So G-forces can, they're not the best of things. And anyways, that will be the end of this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. That episode was a bit shorter than I expected it to. How strange.